Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Berlin, those of you who are lucky enough to be in Berlin. And for the rest of us, this must be amongst the most disappointing things to do from your bedrooms or kitchens. But anyway, we have a very poetically named panel here, which we're calling Darwin's Nightmare, which I think will reflect the evolutionary nature of what we're talking about here, the way that distribution of films and the way that films are connecting with audiences has changed. I've got one little bit of housekeeping for you. It's if you want to ask questions, you need to do it via the chat function. But if you are watching this on the EFM's own streaming site, I'm afraid you're not going to be able to do that. So if you go down to the bottom of the page you're watching on, you'll see something that says, click here to join Zoom. And if you join there, you can come in and participate to your heart's delight. So this session is brought to you by the EFM. Obviously, you all know, with Europa Distribution and in conjunction with the European Network of Independent Film Producers. For those of you who don't know Europa Distribution, and you should, it's been around for 15 years and is an active and dynamic network of publishers and distributors all over Europe. This session, like all of their activities, comes under this clever little umbrella of let's talk, share and learn. And that, I think, in many ways reflects the approach that Europa Distribution tries to take. It tries to be sharing and participatory, fostering excellence in and best practice in the way that distributors and publishers work, building professional skills. But I think increasingly, they're also in the business of knowledge sharing. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about today. This is a challenging environment in which distributors have needed to adapt to changes in markets and to changes in environment, changes in the business environment in which they work. Those best practices, initiatives, ideas, and tools that Europa Distribution tries to put together are always against the background of changing tides within the markets where very different markets, I think, where a lot of people, a lot of distributors operate. And a lot of what we're going to hear from today, I think, is the different perspectives that come from different territories and from different kinds of businesses that have already evolved over time. I think from a Europa Distribution point of view, this has been a period of constant evolution. The changes and fall in revenues from DVD, the competition that has grown for theatrical screens, have all had a very big impact. And whilst VOD is, we know streaming is booming, I think we also have to acknowledge that VOD revenues have yet to kind of reach anywhere near the levels that were coming in those more stable environments of past years. So COVID is offering some of the backdrop to what we're talking about today. But I think it's important to see this in terms of the perfect storm. There were already lots and lots of things going on that were forcing changes and adaptations to ideas. COVID came in and accentuated a lot of the issues that were already there. And now this session is about trying to look at really what we've learned, what's come out of that moment of crisis on top of those changes that are already there. There were obviously some short-term tactical decisions that had to be taken by publishers and distributors to get through the very specific problems of closed cinemas, for example. But what we're going to be focusing on today is that kind of long-term thinking. What came out of the COVID period that maybe offers an approach towards the changing future that we're all going to have to be dealing with, the changed ecosystem, as people seem to like to talk about these days. And we will not be talking, I think, here in terms of pessimistic kind of what's bad or just of our specific difficulties. We're going to be talking here very much about the things that we have learned that offer a way forward for not just for publishers and distributors, but I think for the industry more broadly, and I think will accentuate the importance of publishing and distributing to the broader framework of the European industry. So that's the background, and the background to Europa Distribution, which I hope is going to be helpful in shaping your questions. And remember to go on that Zoom. And it's really important that you do this. If you're on the live stream, go onto the Zoom and join the chat. So our panel, we always say, oh, distinguished panel whenever you get to this point, but actually, I think this is as distinguished a panel as you're going to get. We've got a ton of experience and a lot of different perspectives from companies that have taken different approaches to the last few years. So from Denmark, we have Kim Foss, the CEO of Camera Film. You can give them a little wave as I say your name. That will be nice. We have Babette Wijnjtes of Vedette, Head of Sales and Acquisitions. We have Stefan Bradea, co-founder and acquisitions manager of Romanian company Bad Unicorn. And we have, which I'm sure a lot of you already know, Stefano Massenzi, head of acquisitions and sales at Lucky Red. And that's our panel today. So we're going to, first of all, start, if we may, with you, Stefano. Just give us a sense, first of all, of I think an overview of just what you felt you had to change during that period that is now carried on into the way that you work in general.
Hello. Hi. Yes, basically, we've lived in a bubble. We've lived in a bubble where everything is in a way different from what it was, and very likely it's going to be difficult of what we will see in the future. And so, Darwin's nightmare, because at one point what we're asking ourselves as publishers and as buyers, and also as content creators, because many of us also produce and exhibit, is what our audience is gonna want to buy in the near future. When we're already now, we've got some indications, but what will the market look like once we're back to, I wouldn't even say normal, because there's nothing normal. Once we're back, let's put it this way. So we've seen some trends. So I start giving a bit of answers of what we've seen. We had seen some trends coming from the past. I mean, I think that pandemic has just speeded a process that was coming. The fact that Netflix, Amazon, Disney, and all sorts of platforms would spread in our markets was already planned. It's not about the pandemic, but of course, the consumer has changed very rapidly their habits. And we could see already that the theatrical market was concentrated more on films that were worth going to the cinema to see. Let's put it this way: less of an impulse buy and more of a concerned buy that somebody needs to decide when, where, what time, and organize himself has to make. So there is a complexity around going to the theater that needs to be taken into consideration because the choice is no longer between going to the cinema and having dinner somewhere or doing something else. It's going to the cinema or watching something on a platform that, by the way, has a very high quality nowadays. So we had seen it already coming, but now more and more with the results during the lockdowns, with the reopening, what has worked, what hasn't worked. Most of the films that have worked are films that we can tag as event movies. In every genre, in every kind, we're not talking about big Hollywood movies, we're talking also about art house movies. So every single segment of our market has shown the success or the non-success of certain genres. Then, of course, there are some films that are more affected by the mood. So in general, I could say that sad movies don't work these days because people are not that into going to see a sad movie. But this said, the tag of event movie is something that I think is opening a view in what the future will bear. The concern is, are there enough event movies to upkeep a theatrical market that is made of hundreds and thousands of screens, many times family-owned, small companies, bigger companies that need a constant flow of product, but also a constant flow of clients. So we still don't know. The more optimistic among us think that we're going to see a stable amount of admissions throughout the coming years. The more negative ones are looking at a decline of a mature market, because all of our markets in terms of theatrical markets are mature. And of course, a consistent threat in finding the right films for this kind of market. Why? Because also we don't not only have the competition coming from fellow competitors. We have the competition nowadays of streamers, of companies that not necessarily look at the theatrical model as a model that's still that is for them. Because I think that, you know, the experience, even sharing with our TV partners, is that a movie that has been handled by a distributor, a publisher, we like it to call ourselves publishers, is a film that gains value. That theatrical exposure brings value. Then, of course, it can be done differently, and I think that many streamers have done it on a limited number of titles, and on titles more suitable for the service, have done it successfully. But we are offering a different kind of model that can still survive, of course, if there is an infrastructure, exhibitors, if there is an infrastructure, distributors, if there is supply, production. Maybe production is the less problematic because we are in a producer's market where the demand coming from all over is very, very high. But of course, if high-profile titles that once upon a time made the box office of those cinemas, cinemas in cities, cinemas in multiplex, whatever cinemas there are on the market, are taken away, then we could, of course, face a different problem. In general, and I end, I think that more and more than ever, as publishers, we are frontline. We are the ones discovering new trends, discovering new directors, discovering new stories, and what we will offer for a very demanding audience, who are the ones that decided not to use their remote control but go out and pay the ticket, is going to be, you know, always 1 foot ahead of what's going to be somewhere else.
There's a lot, as they say, to unpack there. I mean, you've got you're making assumptions, which I know from your position are going to be based on a lot of evidence, but that's quite a big thought that we have reached a stage where certain types of films are just not going to be shown in cinemas anymore. That there is a notion now of the event movie, and that those event movies, for a lot of people, sound like they don't include a lot of what perhaps you would have seen at Berlin, a lot of what we imagine to be the European film, European cultural film. that seems like a very big statement to suggest that maybe they're going to have to find their way online. Do you think that's just do you think that's just in Italy, or do you think that's something we're going to be seeing everywhere?
I think that the trends in box office are very common. Then there are peculiarities of every single market. Of course, certain things that work in Italy don't work historically, don't work in Denmark or in Switzerland. And there are markets like France, which has a gift. But, if you speak to the French in this moment, they will tell you that even them are suffering on certain segments and certain kinds of films. Not talking about European and art house movies, talking about the average movies, the ones that used to have decent business, but then were very good on video, very good on television. They honestly don't stand a chance. But we've seen this coming. It's not pandemic. Smaller films that you were mentioning, they had already hard time before, so it doesn't change. So the price, the festival selection, the critics, that will always work, of course. But there we really have to see the numbers. So the trend we've seen in recent months is that you have the names that still really, really work. The festival depends on the genre. So the last winners in Cannes or Venice were very sad, were very difficult films. So they didn't really perform. And, nowhere is not, I don't think there are territories where they did perform. They did a bit of business, but not really perform. So I'm not saying it's going to be worse. It's not going to be better, very likely.
Okay, we'll come back, I think, to some of those points, because obviously an industrial structure has been built around an industry that you're suggesting, I think, is basically got the middle falling out of it. So you've got the big event movers at one end, and then what you've got is, there's going to be a market perhaps for some kinds of niche films shown in art house cinemas. Maybe that doesn't change, but it's those middle ranking productions that perhaps we associated in previous times with European film, where the structure it's going to become more and more difficult, and as a publisher, they become less attractive. Let me come back to you if I can, Stefan, because I'd like to get that a kind of shift of perspective to see whether that same kind of feeling, and maybe look also at some of the mechanisms that are being put in place in other countries to try to either alleviate that situation or to recognize that it exists and do something about it. So Babette, if we could come to you.
Yes. Yes, hello. So I think we are a little bit kind of the odd duck in this discussion and panel, because we entered this summer voluntarily the nightmare of Darwin. So we are a new publisher, and I like the fact that Stefano used that word. We are a new publishing house based in the Benelux. And of course, we were not going to talk about everything that's happening in the pandemic, but why would you want to start nowadays a new publishing house? And I'm going to be very practical in my story about this. So everything that Stefano says is true and makes a lot of sense, but we are maybe being very stubborn. We want to enter this field anyway. So I have to tell a little bit about Vedette. So we started this summer, and Vedette's a collaboration between myself and Anke and Noortje. And between us, we have a lot of experience in the distribution world or in the movie world. And what we do in this new exercise is we combine our efforts. Me has been a distributor for a long time with knowledge of sales and acquisition. They are the owners of a huge marketing agency based on film and television, and also are the founders of Pickle, a virtual cinema platform. So the discussion came up like a year ago, like the pandemic is happening, and we kind of randomly, to be honest, met And this idea came across like, if you would like to start a distribution company or publishing company, what would it be? And then, of course, in terms of innovative, like niche movies, like dedicated audience search, everything passed the review. And we decided to go for it. I wanted to address like 4 topic matters that we kind of decided on that were important. And they're not in that sense like completely new, but I think they're good examples where you can have like a fair good practice to maybe try to change or be part of this ecosystem. The 4 topics are marketing and communication, of course, acquisition, finance, and partners and events. And let me start with marketing and communication. So when you want to release a movie, how do you do it? What do you want to do it? And how do you reach an audience? And again, I'm being very practical. So what we decided on is to have our own data marketing manager. Marketing communication is hugely important. It's going to be more important to reach an audience. There's so many competition out there, online, offline. You have to compete, as Stefano is saying, with other events, with other cultural stuff going on. So how do you make a difference? Well, we thought, let's be very practical, have our own data manager. So we make our own landing pages. We are in charge of our own data. We are in charge of our own marketing campaign. And we can adapt these campaigns when we want to. We can learn from this data and bring it to other releases. And hopefully in the end, we can kind of like have a good practice of taking every knowledge to the next film or movie. So this is like, I can talk about this for hours, but it's like marketing and communication. That's one sense. I think we should experiment more with it. And also, speaking in the sense of finance, put money in it. Find more money to invest in this kind of campaigns, in this kind of experience to find an audience. Then in the sense of acquisitions, we try to make a profile for ourselves. Like, we're not the next publishing house. We want to make a distinguish between ourselves, and we have in the Netherlands a lot of distribution company and very, very good ones. How are we making a difference to the audience? Audience, of course, we're not brands, they don't care. But I do think we make a difference to producers and sales agents by saying we want to focus on the female reach to audience, which of course, as we all know now, is very, very important subject matter and is in the Netherlands at least the largest art house theater. So just not talk about it, but kind of make a profile in which we then can incorporate partners, events, and stuff like that. Again, it's very, very practical. And then also entering the finance level. Of course, there's a whole value chain. You have to buy a movie from a sales agent has bought a movie, and the producer needs his money to again make this film. But we are currently like very actively discussing that could we find other models to have the rights to own a movie in the Benelux? Should we make it maybe less longer terms? Should we even be owners? Should we like look at other ways to finance, to make the risk of publishing houses, which is very relevant nowadays? Should we make less when we're entering in the situations where we are, of still finding committed people to publish movies out there? So it's maybe I'm saying a lot right now. So it's a very practical, good practice that we are lucky that we are new. We can try anything that we want, and we can make decisions to not go for an outdoor campaign, but focus more on a social campaign. We can try to look at new partners. We can do things differently as marketing communication. I think that is really the future of publishing, at least in the Benelux.
I didn't stop you 1 second, Babette. That was a fascinating insight, I think, into what seems to be a publishing industry that recognizes change, but actually still has confidence, it feels, in what it does, in the products that it could have. But it seems to me that a big part of your future is about changing your relationships within a value chain,
Yes.
which perhaps is where the problem lies more perhaps than in the very adaptable publishing business. Do you find willing partners and willing discussion in the Netherlands about that potential for changing that kind of relationships between the value chains?
Well, to be honest, we just started, but I have the feeling that so far it's quite positive. I think there's a willingness to discuss things, to do things differently in the value chains and the finance stuff, but also in the sense that, for instance, we only release 6 movies a year, which is very much on purpose to do only 6 movies a year. So we can work on movies for a long time. I'm not saying that when you do a lot of more movies that you're not working on movies, but it's a kind of conscious choice, which make also with producers or sales agents an interesting conversation to have, to be very transparent about what you do and want you do, what you want to do, and also to commit a certain amount, in our case, to the market P&A budget instead of maybe the MG, which is kind of controversial that we try to have this discussion.
It's controversial, but at the same time, it seems to me there is that was emerging long before the COVID period, a feeling of quality over quantity, that actually that focus, and it's something to an extent mirrors what's happening in the cinema industry too, with that kind of boutique cinema approach where you recognize that there is, as Stefano mentioned, that there is perhaps a distinct audience that isn't huge, but when you aggregate these things, there is a market for quality product done really, really well, and obviously the festivals fit into that mix as well. So that seems to me a very positive viewpoint.
Yes, and if I can add, it's also about the fact that we want to do certain movies, and of course it's very, very modern terms like diversity, a different kind of audience, and we all know that a lot of these specific communities in the Netherlands, at least, don't go to the cinemas a lot. Which the theatrical window is very important, because this is where you earn your most money. This is also your most important marketing platform. But our mission is kind of those communities that don't go to the cinema. How can we reach them? So this involves also a strategy about online releases, and there are many platforms. But are these right now the right ones to reach or to do it with? I'm not saying we have to answer yet, but these are things we're thinking about.
Yeah, Babette, I'll bring Stefan in on this as well. But I think it's interesting because the first step that I think is positive, and I think Stefano would agree with this too, is that there is a market for kind of niche product, which is the great high quality art house stuff is there. It's the middle kind of commercial bit that's falling out. The question I think you raise, which is a really essential one, and perhaps points towards some questions for the future of not just publishing, but the whole film industry, are we in an on-demand industry now permanently, where I, as a cinephile, can be better served than I've ever been before, but spreading the message and that cultural reach becomes more challenging than it's ever been before. And I think that's a question which I think everyone has to face within Europe. But we'll come back to some of those themes. If I can move to you, Stefan, you're a different end of Europe. Maybe you've got different kinds of experiences.
Yes, yes. Exactly what I was going to start with. We're completely at the end of the other end of the territories when it comes to strategies and what's going on, what has been going on in the last 2 years. Things are a bit different to us because, first of all, we do not perceive a threat, an ominous threat from the VOD side, and we continue to believe that theatrical is the way to get acquainted for a film, to get acquainted and to get close to the audience, and the main way for an art house and European title to have a life in on a market. And this is particularly important in Romania, as we do not have any other means of showing the film afterwards, or alternatives. So the VOD landscape in Romania is quite poor at this moment, except for the evidently big players. HBO will also come in a few weeks, and probably we'll see some other big players. But when it comes to art house and smaller titles that you mentioned, it's theatrical or virtually nothing else. And what we've tried, and we applied different models in the past 2 years, including creating our own makeshift TVOD channels in order to keep the conversation running with our audience that didn't have the means to get to the cinemas. The cinemas were closed in Romania for, I think, a record of a total of maybe 10 months. It was one of the longest pauses in Europe, and the only way we could share with the films that we have and that we will have was through these makeshift channels that we created. And for a while it worked, but it was clear for us that once the cinemas would open again, they will become again the main channel of reaching our film audience in general. And of course, I agree with everything that Stefano said, and I recognize myself in what Babette has planned for her as practical methods to reach this audience. We've been doing this for the past 5 years, ever since we started our company, Bad Unicorn, because we simply do not have art house cinema, so a stratified market where we could easily show the films without any, getting bullied and in the back of the programming on the more commercial cinemas. We had to work with commercial cinemas since the beginning, and in a weird paradox, these commercial cinemas were open-minded from the beginning. That in a way saved us and is a constant way of reaching mainstream audience with the films that we have, but with a very important condition that was mentioned by Babette earlier. You have to create a very elaborate, sophisticated, I would say, campaign around them. Otherwise, they're just it's just a big black hole waiting for the film after 1 week. You don't stand any chance in such a weird environment like the Romanian market right now. So we were forced to evolve and to be prepared ever since this pandemic pause that we had, and we used this pause to perfect our methods and to learn even more how to better reach the audience in Romania with new digital marketing tools that we didn't use until now. And I would say that the results are not really spectacular, but we are not suffering as long as we have these efforts of laser focusing on the audience that we believe that our films could reach, even under these very complicated conditions. It really works. I can give you a very practical example. What do we see when we look at the sky? It's a very art house title, a very long title, like the running time, and we managed to reach over 4,000 admissions in Romania, whereas the average art house film before pandemic would normally reach 1.5 or 2,000. So there is, I'm optimistic, and I would say that there is, as long as you play the game, as you prepare the films as good as possible, and you use all the tools that are the marketing tools that are available on the market. And of course, there's also a lot of skill in choosing the right films for the market. You can stand a chance, and theatrical can still work and will work especially in such markets like smaller markets like Romania.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, Stefan, and we'll come on to Kim about this too, is, and I think this comes from all of you, the thing that seems to have changed even before the pandemic is just so much noise. There is trying to get into people's consciousness with so much noise, from not just from our own films and from the VOD platforms, but from a wealth of other entertainment and games and VR and all the rest of it. There are, I think, both you and Babette, and I think Stefan would agree with the same, that it requires publishers to be thinking, how do we make this environment work for us? What are the tools? What are the skills that we might have to learn? But I think what we're hearing from Stefan and Babette is actually that there are mechanisms that are beginning to show signs, but the market maybe is not yet at the level of maturity to know the long-term value. And I think an element from all of you is predicting the long-term future of everything is extremely difficult from where we are right now. So it feels to me like it's contingent evolution. You know, you're taking it step by step. You're bringing in tools, you're seeing whether they work, and then you're moving on. But that adaptability is what is critical. Kim, let's come to you. When you can give us a bit of reaction to what you've heard so far.
Yeah.
And by the way, if anyone wishes to comment, you've still got the chat function up on your right. And if you have been using the EFM site, please feel free to click over to the Zoom and give us a chat. So Kim, sorry.
Yeah, our situation is perhaps a little bit more like Romania. So the story here is that we have been locked down for a period, but now we are reopening. We are now in the starting period of a third reopening, and the signs are clear for me that the audience is there, and we are social animals, and people are ready to come back to the cinema. They're not coming back in the same numbers as they did 2 years ago, but I'm fairly optimistic. And I have to say that I work myself on the different models. I'm running a cinema myself, a huge advantage because I see the customers in the eye every day. I also opened a TVOD platform just when the pandemic started, and we now have 500-600 titles available there. And it's good for the profile of the cinema. It's sharing the name of the cinema, and it delivers a little income, but it's the icing on the cake. As a distributor, when I have titles that are not strong enough for theatrical distribution, I don't even put them out on the platforms because the expenses outweigh the income. So it's, for me, I have to say, I might sound a little bit old-fashioned here, but when I look at the whole picture, to me, it's like, if it ain't broke, why fix it? I don't see any clear solution to how to generate extra income apart from theatrical at the moment. And I think it's really illuminating to see how many of us have been out of work for so many months all around Europe, and how little innovation has come out of all this spare time. We had to think all the big thoughts. So from my perspective, I think it's more about curation, and it's more about the films. And I think what I'm detecting now is, if we have the right content, we have the audience coming. We had a release of a wonderful documentary called The Truffle Hunters, and it's doing outstanding numbers. In Scandinavia, Norway and Denmark will provide the same numbers as the US, not per capita, but in total. So if we have the right films, the people will surely come. The word of mouth is great. My biggest concern at the moment is that people tend to run in the same direction. That means people are seeing the same films and they're not as curious as they were before the pandemic. They're like, we need to continue to educate the audience and to make them aware of the other smaller titles. And I think it will bounce back for sure. And it was great to be back in Berlin. And what I noticed also from the sales agents is, in many ways, it's business as usual. The MGs might be a little bit smaller, but basically we're discussing the same things and the same terms. And I think they might be frustrated that they maybe sell 5 out of 10 films, where it used to be 7 out of 10 films. But I think in a year from now, hopefully we have recovered. I mean, nobody knows what will happen with a 5th, 6th, 7th wave. We cannot predict the future as such, but if we're left in peace by the pandemic, I'm optimistic. That's, I guess, the short version.
It's interesting. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the most optimistic, I think, of what I'm hearing from everyone. But you have actually already been making significant changes within your own company. I mean, it's not like you haven't adapted and explored already to get to where we are. So, it's not really suggesting that nothing has changed. I mean, you have changed, haven't you?
The platform I actually decided upon before the pandemic, so it's a pure coincidence that people looked at me and said, "Wow, that's innovation." It was a pure coincidence, but of course we're trying to explore and run down different avenues. Of course, we're doing that. I'm just saying that the main thing for me to remain in business is to get 300 seats sold for any given film. That's where the real income is for me. And it's, of course, a perspective from my country. It's also a rather small country. So the VOD numbers will be 1/10 of what they are in Germany, for instance. And that also influences my look at the world, so to speak.
Stefano, when you hear Kim's point of view there, I mean, one of the things that I think that you could, all of you could talk on this subject is there the supply of the kind of quality productions that you're all talking about? You're saying that there are going to be the big event movers, but we need this regular supply of really first-class content in order to be able to keep going. Is one of the things that seems to be being discussed at the moment a lot is that the high-quality production going towards Netflix or towards those big streamers, and is that same level, that same production line of high-quality things for you to work with? Are they there for you in Italy?
Listen, there is one thing that I might have mentioned is that there is an oversupply. So there is a world where there's, I wouldn't say too much. It's just there is a lot being produced for various reasons. Predominantly, not only the demand from the various players, but also the fact that there are in place a lot of soft money everywhere, and that pushes again towards a lot of production. When I talk about event movies, I'm not talking about Hollywood blockbuster. An event movie for me is also the movie that wins a festival and it is audience friendly. Audience friendly doesn't mean that it's soft. It can be a tough subject matter. Think of many movies that have won Venice or Cannes. They weren't funny movies. They were serious movies with very serious topics and very important for the evolution of our culture. These are also event movies. When I talk about average movies or middle market movies, are those movies that you find on the platforms and that people are not going to spend money for a ticket for. And then there is the niche that needs, as every movie, you know, everything that Stefan and Babette said is absolutely like this. Nowadays, you need to handle the movies, to invent yourself again, every single movie, more than ever, and create your strategy. Are there enough? It's in our hands in a way, the ability to bring those movies to raise in this level that you were mentioning of noise. And that's, of course, the most difficult task we have as distributors, because, you know, raising the voice in a market that is no longer just a movie against a movie. It's a movie against a content that is going on a platform and that is promoted more or less in the same way we do. So, of course, it's tough, but it's not that we're not used to it. Because yesterday I was writing an email to a colleague that had lost a film. It was a sales agent that was following a director, and the director went somewhere else. This is our story. I think that Kim, Babette, Stefan can give you hundreds of examples of directors that we have discovered, that we have launched, and their next movie went somewhere else, or, as usual, especially in the English-speaking world, to a major company. And today they're working for a platform. So we are content creators, but we're also content searchers.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because when we talk about supply of films for a company like yourselves, you're now more actively involved in actually the way that those films are coming. But it still feels like, and maybe we'll come to Stefan in this as well, that feeling that in the long term, the industry may become more problematic. It may become, you may find that the supply of content becomes more difficult to actually find, perhaps because a loss of confidence in European films in a theatrical setting. Stefano, do you have concerns about production supply?
When we look at the quantity, of course, it's like Stefano said, there is a flurry of product. My inbox during EFM was over flooded with proposals, and we are a small territory. I cannot imagine what happens with Kim's inbox these days. But it's very important for us to see what is important and significant for our market, and also for our identity as a company, because that's also a thing that I didn't have the opportunity to explain. But we try to be consequent with the films, the titles that we take, and they correspond with our beliefs, our credos. There are especially films that tackle important issues, and not just the average random art house film that won a big prize. Sometimes that's against the film's identity, and it goes in the wrong direction as far as we believe that. So we, on one hand, of course, we are interested in films that go to major festivals that have an important buzz internationally and artistically, but we also like to discover new voices, films that play in panorama, that play in sidebars, and time has validated that they become hits. They become one of the best quoted films of the year and appreciated ones. So I wouldn't create a rule out of the availability of good films on the market right now. Films are out there and they need to be found. Of course, it is frustrating for us as a small market, sometimes big or important films or films that we look for many years since the first moment that we found out about them are picked up by Focus Features or by Sony, and they consequently never get to be released in Romania. It is frustrating in many ways, but we move on, and there is good product. There are good titles that we've seen here already, and I'm confident that we will not run out of quality titles.
And Babette, you're the festival is interesting. We come to the we're here one day. I pray next year we'll be back in Berlin, all of us talking face to face. But the relationship between the festival and the publisher and the audience, how is that kind of adapting for you? Because the distributor publisher seems to me to have a really crucial role, and that is where European cultural diversity perhaps is at its sharpest.
Well, I completely agree with what Stefan just said. There's no lack of good, interesting movies and let's be honest, stories. It's about stories. There are really, really great stories out there. And this is also mentioned before by Kim. We are curators, and we have an identity as a publishing house. And it can be different from who you are as a person, what your kind of interests are in the kind of things that you like, but also in the country where you are operating. It makes a difference, but we are curators. And we are in charge of finding these stories and want to have kind of this need and passion. I hate the word, but okay, anyway, like a need or to share these stories with an audience and to curate them. And sorry, my ear is falling out. But so the problem is not finding this wonderful movies. It's about making the connection between what a maker or / producer does and the audience. And there are the chain again in between it and how our role in it defines. And I'm quite in that sense optimistic that yes, in the Netherlands people are going to the bigger titles. It is, the top 3 is Spider-Man and House of Gucci, and then nothing in between, and then there's the art houses. But I think there is a lot of interest for the audience for different stories, but you need to curate them, and you need to accommodate these stories to find an audience. I don't know if it answers your question.
It does, and I think maybe I could bring Kim in on this actually, because I think it goes back to an extent. We've talked a lot here, I think, about innovation in lots of ways. So Stefan has been trying things out. Stefano, you've been doing taking different approaches and recognizing those changes in the market. And Babette, really exciting things happening there. But at heart, I think your point, Kim, is that in some ways it's going back to basics of what publishers do. And that is, as Babette said, that is about curation. It's about that deep kind of knowledge of film, that ability to connect with audiences. But there presumably will be new ways of doing it, but it still gets back to that core of what you are brilliant at and why publishing is so necessary in our industry. Kim.
What's the question, Michael?
The question is, do you recognize the point that was being made, which is, in some ways, that's back to basics. That's what you do. You just do better than you did before, and you use what tools are available to push it. I think Babette, in some ways, was reinforcing your message.
Yeah, okay, then I would just repeat myself, but I think what we're working on is just being better and better at reaching the particular audience for the particular film, and we're still honing our skills on picking the right movies. And we've been doing this for years, all of us, but I think we can all agree that we still somehow, we're not the experts. We will be surprised by the choice of our audiences again and again in good ways in some cases and in bad ways in some cases. But I think as long as we keep alert and we get the right product, and as Babette says and everybody says here, there are so many good films on the shelves. I'm just back from Berlin, and I thought it was pretty decent what was happening. My biggest surprise in Berlin was visiting all the smaller art house cinemas and seeing that they only had American films on the program, but that might also be just a period which shall be overcome.
Brilliant. I lined you up for a goal there. That was a nice, easy way to finish off the session. So I think what we've heard is from all of you is that there are changes in the way that audiences are engaging with film, and that the pandemic certainly pushed some of the things that were already problematic in terms of revenues and in terms of reaching audiences. And Stefano makes a very compelling case, I think, that there needs to be more concentration on quality, and maybe it's that middle. There's no place for the middle mediocre anymore. I mean, it's within the cinema world, at least. So I think that what we heard from all of you is that what publishers do is still as relevant as ever. You take good product when it's there and you give it life. You take that, you use whatever tools are there, and you've always used whatever tools there. It has always been about adapting to the realities of markets at any particular moment. But I think the optimistic reading of this, I think from Babette's side, is that there are tools that are being developed. There are mechanisms. We may not know the future, but what we do know and will always know is that where there is brilliant product and where there is the opportunity to show those films in their best setting, then the publishers will always have a place. And the better and the more adaptable you get at making those connections between content and audience, the better for the whole of the film industry. So I hope that was a useful way to finish off a really interesting session with a lot of different geographical, technical perspectives. And hopefully next year we can be talking in person, and this particular innovation of Zoom can be consigned to the dustbin of history. So thanks very much to the panel, and thanks to everyone else who has joined us today. Thank you.
Thank you.